All right, let's talk productivity. Today, we're building a complete system for mastering your time and your attention. We're going to move way beyond those simple little hacks you see everywhere and actually change how you work from the ground up.
You ever have one of those days? I mean, you know the ones. You're rushing from task to task, your calendar is totally jammed, but at the end of the day, you log off and you're like, what did I actually get done? You can't point to a single meaningful thing. Well, that feeling, that sense of being busy but not productive, that's the central battle of modern work.
Author Cal Newport actually put a name to this solution for this years ago. He called it deep work. And as he says right here, in a world that is just flooded with distractions, the ability to really focus without any interruptions, well, that's basically becoming a superpower. If you can cultivate that skill, you're not just going to succeed, you're going to thrive.
Okay, so let's get into it. Our first section is all about the deep work revolution. Because here's the thing, the real battle we're all fighting isn't for more hours in the day. No way. It's about getting higher quality attention within the hours we already have.
So this draws a super important line in the sand. On one side, you've got deep work. That's when you're totally immersed, pushing your brain to its limits to create something of real value. Think writing a big strategic plan or coding a really complex feature. And then there's shallow work. That's pretty much everything else. The admin stuff, the quick emails, all those little logistical things we do when our attention is kind of all over the place.
And that leads us straight to the big myth of multitasking. Look, we all like to think we're great at juggling a million things at once, right? But the science is crystal clear. Our brains don't actually multitask. As this quote points out, what we're really doing is just switching between tasks really, really fast. And every single one of those switches, it comes with a cost.
So what's the cost exactly? Well, for one, that constant switching makes everything take longer than it should. It also makes it way more likely that you're going to make a mistake. And on top of that, it actually makes it harder to remember what you're doing. It's like a triple threat that just tanks your real productivity.
Okay, so we've established that deep, focused work is the goal. But how in the world do you decide what's actually worthy of that precious, focused attention? Well, that brings us right to our next section, mastering your priorities. We're going to look at some frameworks to help you figure out what really matters. All right, one of the best tools for cutting through all the noise has a pretty impressive origin. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. And it looks simple, but don't let that fool you. It's just a grid that makes you look at every single task based on two things. Is it urgent and is it important? That's it. Everything on your to-do list will fall into one of these four boxes.
And here's the game plan for each box. If something is both urgent and important, you do it. Now, if it's important but not urgent, you schedule it. This, right here, is the golden quadrant. This is where your deep work and your real progress live. Now, what if it's urgent but not important? You delegate it, get it off your plate. And finally, if it's not urgent and not important, you just delete it. Gone.
Here's another powerful way to think about this, the 80-20 rule, also known as the Pareto principle. The basic idea is that for most things, a whopping 80% of your results will come from just a tiny 20% of your efforts. So your mission is to figure out what that vital 20% is, and then guard the time you spend on it like a hawk.
All right, so we know what our priorities are. Now we have to actually make time for them. That brings us to our next section, architecting your time. We're shifting our focus from what to do to when to do it.
And we're going to look at two techniques that are kind of like cousins, time blocking and time boxing. They sound similar, but they're different. Time blocking is all about designing your day. You assign big blocks of time to categories of work. Time boxing, on the other hand, is about getting it done. You set a fixed time limit for one single, specific task.
So let's zoom in on time blocking for a second. Think of it like this. You're treating your calendar like a budget, but for your attention. So you might literally block out 2 hours for strategic planning, or maybe a 45-minute slot just for handling emails. The point is you're telling your time where to go before the day starts, instead of just reacting to everything that gets thrown at you.
Time boxing is a bit different. It creates focus by adding a little pressure. You set a timer, say for 30 minutes, and your only goal is to crank out a first draft of something. This little trick forces your brain to get started and helps you ignore that little voice that wants everything to be perfect. It is an amazing way to break through procrastination when a task feels huge.
But let's be real.
A perfect plan doesn't mean much if it falls apart the second a distraction pops up, right? So in our next section, we're talking about defending your focus. We'll build a toolkit of tactics to protect all that time and attention you've so carefully planned.
First up, the enemy of focus, the inbox. You cannot let it run your day. So, rule number 1, schedule specific, short times to check email. Rule number 2, turn off all notifications. Seriously, all of them. And try to live by the one-touch rule. If you open an email, deal with it then and there. Reply, delete, or file it away. Don't just read it and leave it festering in your inbox for later.
Next up, meetings. You want to make them actually productive? Every single meeting needs to have a clear purpose and an agenda that everyone can see. You've got to be absolutely ruthless about starting and ending on time. And this is a big one. Only invite people who need to be there. And when it's over, everyone should walk away with clear action items so they know exactly what's next.
Now, what about those huge, scary tasks that you just keep putting off? Well, this quote is probably the best advice you'll ever get. The idea is your frog is your biggest, most important task of the day. You have to eat that frog first thing in the morning. Get it done. Because once you've done that, everything else for the rest of the day just feels easy. You know, we've talked a lot about how to work, but the final crucial piece of this whole puzzle is actually about how not to work. And that brings us to our last section, the art of downtime. This is where you'll see why taking a break might just be your biggest secret weapon. This one idea completely flips the whole hustle culture thing on its head. Rest is not the same as being lazy. Far from it. It's actually a key ingredient for high performance. When you take real intentional breaks, it's not just about feeling good. It directly makes your most important work even better.
And let's get specific about why. Taking downtime actually gives your brain the space it needs to solve tricky problems in the background, and it recharges your batteries for the next round of focus. And here's a key piece of data. Research shows that the human limit for truly intense, deep work is only about 4 hours a day. Trying to push past that isn't being a hero, you're just spinning your wheels.
So, that brings us full circle, right back to the question we started with. But now, you have a whole toolkit to tackle it. When you can tell the difference between deep and shallow work, when you prioritize what's truly important, and when you actually respect the power of rest, that's when you finally break free from just being busy. So the only question left is, are you ready to actually be productive?